Oh, you got it going? Okay. Okay, I'm sorry for the delay, everyone. Hi. Welcome to the first board meeting of the year. Appreciate you all being here. We start with a budget hearing, and I will turn this over to Mrs. Crew and Mrs. Robinson. Delightful. That was a guess. I forgot.
So each year, we have to hold a budget hearing. The Clark County Budget Commission requires we file an alternative tax budget, and that's based on Ohio Revised Code 5705.281. And so each year, before the organizational meeting, we have this hearing, and then during the regular meeting, you'll approve the actual tax budget. So if you turn to Schedule 1, Schedule 1 shows all the taxes that are levied by Tecumseh Local. It shows the number of years the levy is to run, the tax years that the levy covers.
I'm sorry, and this is an exhibit for us.
Yes, it is.
Correct. We did not have a
Yes.
printout of that team.
Yes, correct. Shows the tax year that it covers, as well as the years the collection of the taxes begins and ends, and then the maximum collection rate. So this doesn't change unless you pass a new levy, so it's the same every year. Or if you renew a levy, then the dates change in the tax year begin and ends column. Otherwise, this will not change until we retire our bond levy, we pay that off, or the maintenance. So that's not something that changes year to year.
Okay.
Schedule 2 is the statement of fund activity. So this is a statement that shows all the funds of the school district. It shows it shows the first column is what we estimate our balances are going to be in each of these funds as of July 1, 2025. So it's an estimate. Then we estimate what revenues we think we're going to receive during fiscal year 26. So then we estimate what we're going to end up with at June 30, 2026. And we also estimate what we're going to encumber during the year of fiscal year 26. That's also that last column. So again, these are all estimates based on prior year. I also base the general fund on the 5-year forecast. So those numbers tie to the latest 5-year forecast. So that's where those numbers come from. And if you compare it to a previous tax budget, you'll see those numbers are very comparable. The only thing that may change are the grants. We may get a grant one year, like we had ESSER, and now we no longer have ESSER, so you'll see that that's no longer in this tax budget. Schedule 3 is just our voted debt outside of our 10 mil limit. So we do have, when we did the construction of the new buildings, that's our only bond debt that we have. And the final maturity of that is 12/1 of 31. So not too far away.
Wow.
And we show that we will owe at the beginning of 26, so January 1st of 26. And this, you have to understand, these are calendar years because taxes are based on calendar years. So as of January 1 of 26, our principal outstanding is $7.7 million. And then the amount that is required to meet principal and interest payments for calendar year 26 is a little over $1.2 million. And that's shown on the schedule. And that, again, we have to file this with the county auditor's office, and they use this for the collections to make sure we're going to collect enough to make our principal and interest payments. And we do not have any tax anticipation notes, so Schedule 4 is blank. And that's the entire tax budget.
That's our budget hearing. Board members, do you have any questions for Mrs. Robinson? We're good?
Thank you.
We're good. Thank you for this. I know it's an every year kind of thing, so appreciate that. Okay. We're going to go ahead and move into our organizational meeting. I'm serving currently as our president pro tem, so I'd like to welcome you all and invite you to stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Mrs. Robinson, will you go ahead and take the roll, please?
Ms. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Dillon,
Yes.
Ms. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Mills,
Yes.
Mr. Stafford.
Yes.
Wonderful. Moving into the election of a president, board members, I'll take a, Denise, sorry, Mrs. Robinson, do I do this,
You
or?
can.
I'll take a motion in a second for the position of president of the Board of Education for 2025. A nomination and a second.
I nominate Susan Morton for board president.
I know. And Mrs. Clark, Mr. Mills, and Mrs. Clark.
Are there any further nominations for board president?
Thank you.
No.
Mrs. Robinson, you want to do the roll, please?
Mr. Mills,
Yes.
Ms. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Stafford,
Yes.
Ms. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Dillon.
Yes.
Okay, so Susan Martin will be the president. So now I gotta read the oath of office. Do you, Sue Martin, solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States of America, the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge your duties as president of the school board in and for the said Tecumseh Local School District, New Carlisle, Ohio, to the best of your abilities and in accordance with the laws now in effect, and hereafter to be enacted during your continuance in said office and until your successor is elected and qualified?
I do. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Okay. All right, moving on to the election of a vice president. We need a nomination with a second for a vice president. I will go ahead and nominate Mr. Stafford as vice president, if I can have a second, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Mills.
Any further nominations for vice president?
And whenever you're ready, Mrs. Robinson.
Ms. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Mills,
Yes.
Mr. Stafford,
Yes.
Mr. Dillard,
Yes.
and Ms. Clark.
Yes.
Do you, John Stafford, solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States of America, the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge your duties as Vice President of the School Board in and for the said Tecumseh Local School District, New Carlisle, Ohio, to the best of your abilities and in accordance with the laws now in effect and hereafter, to be enacted during your continuance in said office and until your successor is elected and qualified? Congratulations.
It's not good yet. All right. Moving on. Board members will need a motion and a second establishing the designated dates for our regular meetings and work sessions during the year. If I can have a motion and a second, please. Thank you, Mr. Stafford.
Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Dillard. Is there any discussion or any of these dates? They follow a cadence from this year, from last year that we worked through. We do have that July work session, that'll be just an executive session for the board members. Did we want to add any additional work sessions? Is there a reason to? We've had a couple in the past that we just had on there that we could cancel as we go. I don't know your thoughts.
Do we need to have any for any levy initiatives after this one?
Tonight's your last resolution that you're passing is for the renewal.
Okay, I didn't know we needed to have any other meetings prior to that.
I don't believe so. I think that our work session may be for conversations about changes we need to make in our district.
Okay.
I don't know if there's a reason we would have a work session for that, Mrs. Crew, or,
But we certainly could,
okay.
just the anticipation of the renewal and what happens if it doesn't.
Yes.
pass. That could also be an executive session following
Yes.
board meeting.
Okay, all right. So let's just go with this now, and if we need a session, we can absolutely add them in as we go. All right. Mrs. Robinson, the roll.
Mr. Stafford,
Yes.
Mr. Dillard,
Yes.
Mr. Mills,
Yes.
Ms. Martin,
Yes.
Ms. Clark.
Yes.
Item E is our joint community meetings. These are the meetings where we meet with not only our group, but we add in Bethel Township, we add in the city of New Carlisle, we add in Clark County Sheriff, the fire departments. In the past, we've had our state representatives join us, and I know that Senator Kaler has reached out to come back and join us again. So that'll be good. So we have 2 dates. We usually do those on the 5th Monday of a month. So our first one is March and then a second one in September. You can see those here. So we'll need a motion and a second, please, to establish these meeting dates as well, board members.
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Clark. And Mr. Dillard, thank you. Any conversation on these 2 dates? Questions? Excellent, thank you. Mrs. Robinson?
Ms. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Dillard,
Yes.
Ms. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Mills.
Yes.
Mr. Stafford.
Yes.
All right, moving into F, this is where we talk about where we will step in and help represent the board in these different committees throughout the district. We'll need a motion and a second to discuss these, please, board members. Thank you, Mr. Mills. And Mrs. Clark. What we have here is a list of those items. You can see on the far right-hand side who is representing or sitting on those now. I don't know if anybody wants to change these around. Raise their hand for something different. I'm happy to shift around if somebody wants to give something else a try. So I'm also happy to hang out where I am.
I like where I'm at.
Okay,
I'm happy with that.
Roger, you're good?
Yeah, I'm fine.
All right, then I believe these will all stay the same. Wonderful. The roll, please, Mrs. Robinson.
Mr. Mills.
Yes.
Ms. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Stafford.
Yes.
Ms. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Dillard.
Yes.
All right, we are moving into item G, and I believe we need a motion and a second on this, and then we'll turn it over to Mrs. Crew. So board members, a motion and a second, please, for the standing authorization. Mr. Dillard, thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. And Mrs. Crew, I think this is an annual idea, but I'll pass it over to you for any comments.
Sure, it is an annual item that the board passes, and it just gives the superintendent and treasurer the ability to hire in between board meetings and in the summer, also discipline as well when we're not in session.
Discipline for teachers and non-teaching employees is how, I just want to make sure, because we have all sorts of discipline, so. Related to staff.
Related to staff, yes.
Clarification. Board members, any questions on this? I hear none. Mrs. Robinson?
Mr. Dillard,
Yes.
Mr. Mills.
Yes.
Mr. Stafford,
Yes.
Ms. Martin,
Yes.
Ms. Clark.
Yes.
All right, we are done with the organizational meeting, so I'll need a motion and a second to adjourn.
I'll move. Second.
Thank you, Mr. Stafford and Mr. Mills. Mrs. Robinson?
Mr. Stafford,
Yes.
Mr. Mills,
Yes.
Ms. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Dillard, Ms. Clark.
Yes.
5:52.
All right. Deep breath, changing gears. We are now moving into our regular meeting. Mrs. Robinson, if you will call us to order, please.
Ms. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Dillard,
Yes.
Ms. Martin,
Yes,
Mr. Mills.
Yes.
And Mr. Stafford.
Yes.
thank you. We have done the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'm happy to do it again if anybody is so inclined. Happy. Board members, we have the meeting minutes from our December 10th meeting. I need a motion and a second for those, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Clark and Mr. Mills. Any questions, comments, concerns, corrections to those minutes? I hear none. Mrs. Robinson?
Ms. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Mills?
Yes.
Mr. Stafford?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Dillard?
Yes.
Wonderful. Moving on. Mrs. Drew, I'll turn this over to you, please.
Thank you very much. As you may or may not know, January is designated as Ohio School Board Appreciation of our board members throughout the state. So I do have a certificate for each of you to pass out. And each one reads that this certificate is presented to individual, in this case Sue Ann Martin, in sincere appreciation for exemplary leadership and service to public schools. I just have some information on each of you as well. Sue Ann Martin is in her second term on the Board of Education. She was first elected to serve in the 2018 through 2021. Her current term runs through 2022 through 2025. As you know, as of this evening, she continues to be our board president. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Mrs. Drew.
Very much. Mr. John Stafford. Again, this certificate is presented to John Stafford in sincere appreciation for exemplary leadership and service to public schools. It's for you. And a little bit about John. John Stafford first served on the board in 2012, completing the term of the late Mrs. Beverly Quinn from March 2012 through December 2013. John began a second term in 2022, which runs through 2025. Thank you, Mr. Stafford. Mr. Mills? It's treacherous back here.
Yes, it is.
Hazards.
Hazards. Appreciation of certificate is presented to you in sincere appreciation for exemplary leadership and service in our public schools. And I'll get you yours. I'm not proud of
All right,
yours.
thank you.
You guys changed these up.
My bad. Make sure I have it.
No, that's okay. That's all right.
Oh, she thought of an order of seating.
I did. You guys moved on. There you go, sir.
Thank you.
And Mr. Matt Mills first joined the board in January of 2023 to fill the vacancy created by Mrs. Slagle's resignation. He began his first full term in 2023, which runs through 2026.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. This is a certificate of appreciation presented to Mrs. Brenda Clark and sincere appreciation for exemplary leadership and service to public schools. Okay. Mrs. Brenda Clark is serving her first term as a board member, which began in January of 2023 and will run through 2026. Thank you. Mr. Roger Dillard. This is a certificate of appreciation to Mr. Roger Dillard and sincere appreciation for exemplary leadership and service to our public schools. You are welcome. Mr. Roger Dillard is serving his first term as a board member, which began in January of 2023 and runs through 2026. I'd like to extend my appreciation to each of you. Sometimes it's a thankless job. I know you have full-time jobs, or not, outside of those of you who are retired. So I do appreciate all the time that you give to our district and your love for Tecumseh Local. Thank you. And next on the agenda would be the reports, and I need to share with you that Mrs. Strader was not able to attend this evening, so I pushed that presentation. She needed her team here, and it was a Employee Day, et cetera. So that will be in October of next year, because you have a presentation for the 5-year forecast in May.
Yep.
At each of the following board meetings.
Perfect. Thank you. You're welcome. Anything else at this time? No. Perfect. Great. We are moving into our first opportunity for public comments pertaining directly to items on the agenda. I ask that, hold on, I gotta get my notes. I'd ask that you adhere to our policy 0169.1 regarding public participation in our board meetings. We've set aside 30 minutes for this section of public comments, and it'll be 5 minutes per individual until all individuals have had a chance to speak. I've asked Mrs. Robinson to be our continual timekeeper. Thank you so much. During public comments, no single participant can speak on the same topic more than one time until all participants have been heard. All statements will be directed to the board as a whole, as we preside as one official body. The presiding officer can ask the superintendent for additional follow-up after the meeting as appropriate. Comments should be respectful at all times. Profanity, derisive language, and intimidation will not be tolerated, and the commenter may be asked to leave the meeting. Comments and questions related to a specific student, student situation, or staff situation are not allowed in a public forum. If appropriate, an individual can be asked to come into executive session with the Board of Education. We will not comment on any pending or ongoing legal matters at this time. Again, this is our first time for public comment pertaining to items specifically on the agenda, so I will open that up at this time.
This is in regard to the board policy for arming staff. I'm gonna set my timer too, just so I can look down. Not that I don't trust these, just, it's funny, I stand up here a lot and I'm never nervous, but tonight, I think because I'm very passionate about this. So I'm asking you at the beginning of the meeting to postpone the approval of the board policy to arm your staff. I was on Everytown USA trying to find data on arming staff. And the key points that I found were in 23-24, there were 49 deaths from gunfire and 116 additional injuries on school grounds. A study of the Dallas Police Department found that only 54% of firearm discharge events in armed confrontations resulted in hits. So trained police department, 54% are hitting their target. Law enforcement receives an average of 840 hours of basic training, including 100, and this is nationally, Clark County could be different, 168 hours of training on weapons, self-defense, and the use of force. We are going to require 24 hours. Arming staff can result in additional liability risks. Teachers and staff may be exposed to criminal liability depending on how our policy lines up with state laws. Arming staff jeopardizes a trusting school environment, which are essential for school safety. And what we are essentially doing is asking our staff to take the life of a student, and that's unrealistic. A staff member cannot, in total chaos, be able to turn into a specially trained law enforcement officer, which is what we are asking them. I thought it was interesting, I found on that website, and everything was fact-checked, National Association of School Resource Officers opposes arming teachers due to the risk it poses to law enforcement and to the armed teachers. When an officer shows up, he doesn't know if you're the good guy or the bad guy, he's not gonna ask questions. Also, we talked about, we had the training this fall where the noise and teachers can't even remember to lock their doors, which is why we have to have our doors locked now. So not only are we asking them we're saying you aren't competent enough to lock your doors, but you're gonna be competent enough to go find your safe or wherever you have it locked, I'm assuming it will be loaded, and then shoot a former student or a parent or a family member. Looking at Tecumseh Local, again, I asked this in November and it's still my question. My main question is why and why now? Why in November? Also, we have a right to feel safe at work. And I know the board, you all have jobs elsewhere. And I'm curious if you have unknown armed staff on your payroll or in your workplace. It's one thing to know that Paula has a gun. It's another thing that I don't even know who's going to be armed in my building. That's a huge safety issue. We started surveying staff before break and hope to finish after break, but even in the surveys we have back so far, 73% of our staff are opposed to this policy and that they feel that they will not be safe at work. I've been here a long time and this policy seems very rushed, very hush-hush. It doesn't seem very transparent. Even the policy itself isn't very transparent. I also know a concern from the TEA is the powers given to the superintendent, which we trust Paula, but she's not going to be here forever, and once you put this policy in place, it's hard to get a policy out. It's kind of like negotiations. Once you put it in, you can't really get it back out. So if she leaves or retires, that means we are saying whoever's in charge, you get the policy to decide who's armed in our district. I just feel it's not a good policy for staff, it's not a good policy for staff and board relationships. Again, teachers have commented in the surveys, they worry about being safe. Brenda, I know we're not, the question was where was TEA in regards to the levy? I worry about how that's gonna impact teachers. I feel like we will lose teachers. We have high turnover already, and this will not help. Our enrollment is dropping with our families. This will not help. And if we're under immediate threat, which is what's implied by the rush and the hurry and the mid-year of this, hire 3 more SROs. Again, I ask that the board does more research on the effects of arming staff, considers the ramifications, talks with the stakeholders, and please postpone adopting this policy tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Fugate?
I'm going to talk on the same subject as Carrie just spoke of, and it's the weapons use.
Can you speak up a
Because
little bit?
several years ago, this was introduced. And even at that time, the majority of the staff said no. We don't want it. We don't want to be responsible. Also, it being kept from everyone, and then all of a sudden appearing, is not a very good statement to the citizens or the staff of Tecumseh Local Schools. And I really feel, after doing my research originally, because I even talked to the head of this district on the SROs to find out how we could get some in here, is, you know, it's much more important for us to have them, but to not know who's carrying a weapon, or where, or how, and no offense, but with any of us, we never know what frame of mind we might be in at a particular time. Something traumatic may have happened to us this morning when we came on to school anyway. So I'm dead set against it. And I think that we should listen to our staff, because we are losing too many teachers. And I don't want to see us lose the good teachers that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Fugate.
Podium's not made for short people.
We can just step.
It just says, I may just stand to the side of you.
Perfect.
So my name is Greta Ebert. I'm the librarian at Donaldsville Elementary. I'm also a member of TACE. I have 3 children that are currently attending Tecumseh schools. I am a daughter and sister of 2 retired police officers. I not only grew up with firearms in our home, but I also currently have a conceal and carry license. All of this is to say that I have a vested interest in our students' safety, as well as what I consider a fair amount of experience and knowledge of firearms. When I took the conceal and carry course, my instructor was a police officer, and one of the first things he impressed upon us was, quote, "You should never carry a firearm unless you are willing and prepared to take the life of someone," end quote. Even if you plan to only use firearm as a form of defense, you need to be prepared for the eventuality that you could end a person's life, which means that by arming your staff, you are asking educators to be prepared to take a life, potentially the life of a former or current student. You're asking educators to go beyond teaching and asking them to assess the situation, whether or not to engage the shooter, remember that could be a potential student, while working to protect their current students, handling an extreme level of stress, putting their own life at risk, and preparing themselves to potentially take a life. If you think that I'm being dramatic or over the top, I would like to add that very recently, I was put in the position of finding a loved one with a gunshot wound. It is a situation that I wish upon no one, and it carries a great deal of trauma for anyone who has to experience it. You are asking staff to prepare themselves for that potentiality. You're asking my coworkers, my friends, and those that I love to stand in the face of such trauma and carry a weight that no civilian should carry. I do not know one coworker from my building that would not willingly stand in between a shooter and their students. However, you now ask them to do so while preparing to take a life. You do not understand the responsibility you are putting upon your teachers, and I ask you to seriously consider what you are asking of us. It is not just asking faculty to keep students safe, it is asking your staff to carry a burden that they should not have to bear. Thank you.
Hello, this is Lane.
Hello, Ms. Martin. I'm Rita Lane, and you might remember that I was here at the November board meeting. Thanks to the school resource officers for protecting me from the person who tried to intimidate me. I've lived in the district for 40 years, and I've always voted yes on every tax levy. I'm retired with 43 years of experience with Springfield City Schools, 15 years of those being an elementary principal. And I served for 30 years on the Tecumseh Education Foundation. I'm also a member of the New Carlisle Church of the Brother. So I'm here to talk about the RTRI policy. And before I do that, I also want to thank all of you for your service, because particularly that November meeting, you had to be here for so long and just listen and all that. So I really appreciate all of you. Unfortunately, our state legislators have passed a law requiring districts to allow RTRI. I'm sad about that, because that takes away local control over whether you really want to offer it. I'm really sad about that. So I'm hoping that you will implement it in an appropriate fashion for our district, if the people who want to do it still follow through with that. My biggest question is, have you designated all courses as core courses? I'm talking about art, music, PE. Have you? I don't know if you want to answer that now. If you haven't, I hope you
We have a
will.
policy that you're reviewing this evening, and we'd be happy to read that.
So you are reviewing it this evening?
Yes,
Okay, great.
tonight is the first reading of that policy, it's a revision.
Okay, I couldn't tell that, from the agenda, because it just was just one line on it.
Exactly.
So, also, you're gonna have to do a lot of revamping for how you do attendance, because, that has to be subtracted from instructional hours, so that's more tracking and reporting. I really hope that no school employee will be encouraging or promoting this, and that it will not be promoted on school property. It's really sad, too, that this is just one church curriculum, so it also is a very conservative one, which may affect how a lot of our students feel. I have a friend who teaches in the Marysville district. She teaches a lower elementary grade. And she told me, she said, you know, after the kiddos come back to the classroom, I have to spend almost 10 minutes getting them back into the flow. So it's not just the time that they're out, it's getting them back into the flow. I know someone in November said that, oh, we sing and play games on the bus and all that kind of stuff. Well, her kiddos come back and do some unusual, inappropriate behaviors, not awful things, but in the classroom. And then there also may be kiddos trying to recruit other kids, so I hope that those kids don't feel pressured to attend. And also, you know, I hope that the district doesn't feel like they need to enforce that a child goes, because I can picture a kid saying, I don't want to go today, you know, thinking maybe something else better is going on in his room. And it shouldn't be the role of the school employee to say, you have to go. You know, it's certainly parent choice, and children's, shouldn't be children's choice on a given day. I'm concerned about the quality of the background checks. I hope that will be in your policy, that people who are working with children in this program have to pass the same kind of background checks that our employees in the district do, very carefully. Okay, that was the buzzer in there.
That was your buzzer.
Okay, so there's a long list of requirements, and I'm sure the Ohio School Board Association will help you with all of that, certainly all of you, and I did send some of my concerns on to Paula and to Sue Ann, so thank you.
Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well, how are you?
Good, thank you.
I'm Carol Strayer, I'm back again, 309 North Clay Street, New Carlisle. I also am here to speak about RTRI. I know that Governor DeWine, as of earlier today, had not signed the bill yet, and so therefore could be making amendments to it. I hope he is. I know that because of that Ohio legislation, Tecumseh schools will need an RTRI policy in place. I encourage you to look at the bill and all the guardrails that it is allowing you to provide, such as background checks, core curriculum, etc. I know this is a tough thing for all of us to go through. Some of us have faith traditions, me included, and those faith traditions are different. And each child who comes into a school comes from a different faith tradition. I'm hoping that the way Tecumseh sets it up will not allow the children who do not come from this particular faith tradition that LifeWise is promoting, that those students will not feel lesser than. I guess that is a good way to put it, lesser than. And I would hope that the board takes that into consideration. And I'd like to thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Mrs. Strayer. Mrs. Robinson, how are we on time, please?
We've got 15 minutes.
Okay. Hi.
Hi, my name is Mary Gokenauer. I am not from this district, I am from the Shawnee district. However, I do have friends who have children that go to Tecumseh schools. Is it okay if I speak?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
I understand the,
Did you fill out a form?
I did not. Is
Okay,
that
will
what-
you before, perfect, so we can have your name. Perfect.
Yes, can I do that after? I do it?
Absolutely.
Okay,
No, thank you. I just didn't want to forget it, because then it would all go and,
I
you know.
understand.
No, thank you. Go
I
ahead.
wasn't expecting to speak, so forgive me if I am stuttering a little bit. But I did want to discuss the release time for religious instruction also, and maybe provide some potential guidance for how you could write your policy to help protect the students, the parents, and the district. I do have a couple copies of examples if it may help. But a couple of things that stood out to me was that consent forms would need to be submitted each year. That they include specific information about which classes the student would miss. The entity must provide you all with their insurance policies and coverage. They would not require the parents to sign a waiver, to waive liability in case something happened on their premises. That teachers should not have to adjust their lesson plans. Students should not have to go to a study hall, for example, if the class size becomes too small. That the students who are left will continue with their program and their class schedule. That district staff should not promote or encourage attendance or participation in the program. I mean, there are a lot of highlighted options here or highlighted discussions here that you guys could potentially talk about. But another one is that you may disqualify any sponsoring entity from having students released to them if they don't meet the guidelines and requirements that you provide in your policy. So just leave yourself in case something does go wrong and you need to protect yourselves. So that was it.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi, my name is Liz Lawrence, and I am a teacher here in the district. I've been here for 29 years. The last time that we had a board meeting, I wrote and read a letter in my opinions about arming staff at Tecumseh Local Schools. I talked about the cost of that, and I also talked to you about the what-ifs. As I sit here tonight, I was asked by a staff member that I work with to read an email. I believe she emailed it to you directly, but I wanted to make sure that everyone had seen that, and she asked me to read that. So this email is from a friend and trusted coworker that I work with. Her name is Robin Morris. I believe she came to a meeting and spoke as well about her regard for the Army staff policy as well. So she says, "It has come to the attention of the certified staff, among others, that discussion will be continued, possibly included with a vote on whether to allow staff members to enact and conceal carry in our buildings. Just a small reminder, there are only 5 board members on the Board of Education, and there are only votes, they are the only votes that are cast and the only votes that count, only 5. Ironic how the 5 voting members of the board are not present in the daily workings of a school building. They can take visits, they can stop in on a whim, they can visit staff, students, or even children or grandchildren, but their presence is limited. We have teachers, staff, and resource officers who are there every day, but it seems as if you have bypassed many of them in your decision-making process. It seems as if our voice is non-existent. We are not the decision makers, I understand that, but we are a critical piece to this system. I sit at DLT meetings time and time again and hear about the safety of our campuses and the amazing job of our resource officers, which I 100% agree. So why the need for this concealed carry in the middle of a school year? A simple conversation is all that we are asking for before this vote is made. Please keep in mind, only 5 members of the board vote, only 5. You have all the power to make this decision. I should hope that you do your due diligence before you simply say yes. Thank you, Robin Morris, Park Lane Elementary kindergarten teacher." I myself agree with Robin Morris about arming staff. I feel like our staff will not feel safe. As I look around at my coworkers and I think to myself, if this policy is in place, I'm I just really think it is going to change the mentality and the vibe that we have in our schools. Park Lane Elementary is a great place to work and a great place to be. And I really feel like that is going to make some changes. I, myself, definitely do not envy you tonight as you sit here at this meeting. You are going to make a very important choice for thousands of current students, future students, current staff members, future staff members, and their families today. And I hope it is a well-informed decision and that you have spent a lot of time deciding. The what-ifs that I talked about the last time I stood up here are very scary and very concerning. And they are things that we definitely need to think about. What we are asking our staff members to do, we already have huge jobs. We are counselors, we are nurses, we are teachers. The number of jobs that a staff member at Tecumseh Local Schools has is, it's just amazing how many things, how many decisions you make in a day. Why do we need to add this decision, this policy to a place that's already so overwhelming? Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi there,
Remind me of your last name.
Man.
Man. I was going to say that. Mrs. Mann, thank you.
Yes. Well, good evening, board. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak this evening. And first, I want to begin with a thank you for the posting of the minutes from the September regular meeting and special meeting, as well as October's regular meeting. The conversation that took place regarding the release time for religious education during September's regular session was very illuminating and important for the public to see. So thank you for releasing those minutes and getting those posted. On tonight's agenda, there are two areas I would like to direct my comments. The first is the resolution to allow armed staff in school. During the November meeting, it was quite shocking to hear that the school board was ready to vote and approve of a policy to arm district staff without any prior conversation with district teachers. This lack of cohesion is alarming as a parent. I hope since the November meeting, more conversations have taken place, and I hope more conversations are heard again tonight. Your resolution states that, quote, such protection is essential in creating and preserving a proper learning environment, end quote. And I have to assume that this means in the event of a school shooting. This means that you would be able to accomplish this goal. And I would like to look at how we as a district can prevent school shootings as a whole and eliminate the threat altogether. According to research, students who commit school shootings often exhibit signs of significant mental health struggles, including depression, suicidal ideation, feelings of isolation, and a history of bullying or trauma, and frequently displaying warning signs through social media to peers, and often are seen as cries for help. Before carrying out this act, so most are considered to be in a state of crisis at the time of the shooting. And according to CDC data from November of 2024, around 40%, that's 4 in 10 students, report persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness, and 20% seriously consider suicide, and nearly 10%, 1 in 10, attempt suicide. Anxiety disorders are most common mental health issue among adolescents, with depression also being most prevalent. Therefore, by considering data alone, it is more likely, statistically speaking, for a school shooting to occur when a school does not have an effective means of dealing with their pupils' emotional trauma stemming from depression, isolation, and bullying. Which leads me to the number one benefit of release time for religious education. Programs like these teach from the Word of God, which teach the importance of loving one another and the equality of all people. The Bible teaches us life is difficult regardless of your age, and reminds us that we're not designated to walk this life alone. The facts regarding improved mental health of students attending programs like LifeWise is proven. There are better ways to navigate these waters than just adding guns to the public school environment. I conclude by celebrating the fact that the act passed by Senate and the House on December 18th now sits on the governor's desk since December 30th. And on January 9th, the Parents' Bill of Rights Act will become law in the land of Ohio, and the parents will be able to stay informed regarding students and be able to elect for them to attend religious education during the school day with no further hindrances. I look forward to seeing LifeWise being implemented in every elementary school and also at the middle school. Again, thank you for your time.
Thank you. I would open it up one last call. We have 4 minutes left, 4 minutes. I will give you 5 minutes, Mr. Ford.
First off, thank you for letting me speak. There's been a lot of good information brought forward tonight pertaining to the Army and the staff. Some of it's very concerning. The problem with as far as the students themselves being identified, potential problems, psychology, et cetera, that's something that's currently on the books. That's something you're currently doing. So now we must ask ourselves, do you feel safe at work if there's a firearm in the building? Well, if you go shopping, look around, you're going to see people that's probably carrying. Should you feel scared then? I got involved in this back in 2016. I presented a presentation at that time. I got the information from Sydney City Schools, which have implemented theirs in early 2016 and is still implemented at the school, at the district. The way they done it, they had volunteers. Nobody was forced to carry a firearm. Nobody was forced to take the training. They all volunteered. Why did they volunteer? Because of the love of their students. They wanted to be able to stop somebody that is a threat. No longer a parent, no longer a grandparent, no longer a student. They are a threat. They're there to do serious bodily harm and kill somebody. Okay, based upon that, what is your authority, what should you be doing as a school board? Let me read something here. Dr. Susan Hupp was having lunch with her parents at Louie's Cafeteria in Texas. This is back in 1991, prior to the permission of carrying firearms. What happened, an individual drove through the restaurant, got out of the vehicle, and the end result was 23 people were killed, 27 others were wounded. Now, Dr. Susan Hupp was she was certified at the range when she was shooting, but at that time, you could not carry a firearm in Texas. What was the end result? The number of deaths we had and the injuries. If she would have had that, she could have possibly stopped it. So, now you have to ask yourself, and you have to ask yourselves out here, at what point does that student, grandparent, parent that becomes a threat, at what point do you just want to stand in front of them, take the bullet, somebody else gets shot, maybe 10, 15, 20, or do you want somebody in the buildings that's went through training on a monthly basis? That's what they do up there. As far as identifying the individual, they had specific identification clothing that they could put on. As soon as the police showed up, they knew who the good guy was. Okay? So, where do you draw the line on protecting the students as well as protecting yourself? So, I don't understand the logic behind that. Let's go with this also. Approximately 750,000 new concealed carry permits was issued in 2013 and 2022. 600,000 were renewed during that time period. So ask yourself, if you're out shopping, who's actually carrying a firearm? Are you going to leave the building? Or are you going to take and go with the fact that they've had a thorough background check? They know what they're doing, they've had the training. And the training that they'd receive here would be additional training. Who knows the buildings better than the staff members of the building? In the event something goes down, how would you do that? How would you know where to go to maybe cordon somebody in an area? We ask our sheriff's deputies, police officers, and everyone to say, oh, you have a firearm. Wait a minute, what is that firearm? That firearm is a tool. It's a tool that they have to use to protect themselves and you and us, okay? So why not have that tool within the building with properly trained staff? If nothing else, you can keep them in one end of the hallway Because once, if they're on the receiving end, they don't want anything else. They're gonna stop, they're either gonna put the weapon down, or they may end up shooting themselves. Either way, you're obligated to eliminate the threat of the students. And whoever has that firearm is the one that's initiating the threat. And I thank you for your time.
All right, last call. I see none. Thank you all for your comment. Okay, I gotta pause. I know I'm silly. I need an agenda. I got something sticky on mine. It's driving me crazy.
Your agenda's sticky.
I don't know how.
Thank you.
You're okay now, right? All right. Board members, moving into adoption of consent calendar for personnel. This is items A through G and addendum item AA. At this time, I'll take a motion and a second, please. Thank you, Mr. Stafford. And thank you, Mr. Ellis. Mrs. Crew, anything that you want to call out to us in this section?
Yes, a couple of things. First, Brian, would you please go over item C, which is actually Mindy Lane should be moved. The item the employment for classified, is a classified employee.
Sure.
That was just a mistake, but could you talk about the van driver and our
Absolutely.
plans for that?
So you'll remember a few years ago, we purchased a couple vans. And the intent with those was to be able to transport students to, small sporting events, to transport kids when needed, to kind of lessen, that wear and tear on buses. And it could also be used in a situation where we need to transport a small number of students. Mrs. Lane has been working with Karen to get school van driver certified in this position. And so we're waiting on results of a background check as well as her physical because they're required in addition to doing training, just because they're operating a motor vehicle device to have a physical. So we are anxious for you guys to consider her employment here. She would also be willing to serve as a substitute aide on a bus in the instance that we need a substitute. So she would be driving some of our students that attend private schools that we are required by the state of Ohio to transport, and then that would lessen some of those wait times for some of our CTC students that attend CTC. So.
And could you talk about that, right now there's quite a bit of wait.
Yeah, so.
And this will minimize wait time from what location?
So when students are picked up, some requirements with transportation are that we have to pick a student up by a certain period of time after the day is over. But it does not stipulate how soon we have to get those kids home from when we pick them up. Obviously, the goal is to not, make kids sit on buses. That's not productive. Anytime a kid is in a situation that they're just sitting there, that creates stress on the driver, creates stress on the kid. They just want to get home. This would eliminate some of that wait time. In particular, students that attend, I believe, Emmanuel Christian, the Montessori in Springfield. There was a third one, I can't remember what that one was. But it would alleviate those wait times and would allow those students to get home at a traditional time, as well as our CTC kids to make it back here to campus earlier than they currently are. Did that answer what you had asked?
And so that's exciting because the reason we purchased the vans is to reduce that time for our students.
Is this only needed in the afternoon, or would this also be utilized morning?
It's only needed in the afternoon because the schedules line up to where the drop-off works with the same time as our students at CTC. Their day ends sooner than those students that attend some of these private schools, again, or required by the state of Ohio to transport. And so those students, would get out at their traditional time. When the CTC students get out earlier, they wouldn't have to wait on the bus, because currently they're waiting on the bus until the student's day is over. There's not time enough to take those kids home and then go back and get the other students before that mandated pickup time.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So we need to move Mindy into item D, is what you're telling me. Perfect.
And then we do have item G, I want to talk about that as well. That is, Dan Vaughn is interested in retiring, rehiring, and I would recommend that to the board, as well as on the addendum, we have Lisa Wells, who's asked to retire, rehire for next school year. So if you'll recall, we have to have this on the board agenda 3 different times. For these two, you are approving the notification that we're going to have a hearing. And the hearing for these two and our third one, Shelley Randall, will take place in February at that board meeting. And then the March board meeting will be the actual motion that you would approve them for hire, for retire, rehire.
Thank you. Board members, I'll just call out item F as well. This is the addendum to our superintendent and treasurer contracts, changing the longevity incentive for both of those and adding the annuity for the superintendent, matching the annuity that we have in place for our treasurer as well. With that, I will ask if there are any questions on any of those items. Item F. I hear none. Mrs. Robinson.
Mr. Stafford?
If I wanna single out one thing, do I just say it then, or just?
We need to pull something out and vote on it separately.
Hey, I wanna pull out,
Okay, so, do we need a motion in a second to pull that out? No, we just need to pull it out and vote on it separately. Perfect. So then, we will go ahead for personnel and we'll do A through G plus AA minus F. Math, alphabet math. All right, so with that, pulling out item F, board members, I need a motion in a second, please.
You
Wrong.
can still use the same motion.
I can use the same motion.
Yeah, so it'd be
Okay.
Mr. Stafford?
Yes.
Mr. Mills?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Dillard?
Yes.
And Ms. Clark?
Yes.
And then we need a motion and a second.
And a motion
Just
and a,
F.
perfect, thank you. Motion and a second for F, please. I'll make a motion. I need a second for voting separately on item F. Martin and Mills, Mrs. Robinson.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Mills?
Yes.
Mr. Dillard?
Yes.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Stafford?
no.
Thank you. Moving into adoption for consent calendar for administration. Items H through N. Board members, we need a motion and a second. And while we're thinking about that, I think we go ahead and pull N out and vote on it separately as well. Thank you. So let's go ahead and do H through M. Thank you, Mr. Stafford.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Mrs. Crowe.
Thank you. On item H, resolution of assurance, this is an annual resolution that the board is asked to pass. And this is in relation to your Title VI, which is your civil rights, and your Title IX, which is the sex discrimination, as well as the 504, which is the Rehabilitation Act, the American with Disability Act. And you have to have an individual who oversees that, a coordinator, so we're just asking you to approve Susan Weil to be the coordinator for Section 504 and Title IX, and for myself to continue to be the coordinator for Title VI, which is the civil rights. And And then appointing a designee on item J to be the Ohio Public Records designee in charge of that at Tecumseh. And we're asking that that continue to be me here. And then Denise, do you want to talk about the service fund?
K Service Fund, this is every year the board approves, per Ohio Revised Code, you have a service fund set aside, and really it's just in the general fund. It's nothing, it's not a separate fund or anything, it's just set aside, up to $20,000, and that's where the board's paid from, and all your, if you go to meetings, et cetera. Every district does it once a year.
Thank you. And if I remember correctly, Mrs. Robinson, we never spend 20 grand. All right. Mrs. Kern, the calendar?
Yes, I have a copy if you'd like to take one. It's draft A that we talked about
Yep.
last time. This is the one that
Thank you.
TEA asked for us to go with, and we were fine with that. There were only a few differences in the two calendars based upon the survey that was disseminated to staff asking their opinion on some things. So tonight is your opportunity to approve that for us for next year, please.
All right, and emergency levy.
And the last one is that resolution to proceed with the emergency levy, and that was updated in your documents. And that is for, I have a
It's
copy.
the resolution to proceed.
I have a copy of that for you, just so you have that. And we're asking to put, Ward 1 as a district, to put the renewal, the larger of the two on, that one that generates the $2.1 million annually. We only have two chances to pass that, May of 25 and November of 25. And at this time, Matt, not to put you on the spot, but I first of all want to thank you for continuing to be the levy president. We're allowed to share information that's factual in meetings. Could you tell us, are you still planning to serve in that role? And if so, do you know when our first levy committee meeting will take place?
Yes, I still plan on serving, be honored to. The tentative date for the first levy committee meeting of this, for this levy, this renewal will be January 15th. That is a week from tomorrow. Aero Conference Room. We're going to do it earlier so that the staff and teachers would like to participate and be involved. It'll be at 4 p.m. The first meeting will be a debrief, some lessons learned. I don't anticipate much action being done, maybe a re-strategization, that's a completely different thing.
Totally.
Completely different. And so I encourage everybody to attend TEA leadership. If you can come, I'd love to hear some lessons learned from your part. The main players will be there and just try to formulate how to get the message across to the players on the facts of this levy. It will be a lot simpler this time, but it is important. It is important that this passes and that we get a group effort on it. And that's all I have on that.
Mr. Mills, what time did you say that was?
4 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
All right, with that, board members, questions on those items through letter M?
I just have a question about,
Yeah.
are you gonna put that out on the levy page, through Facebook?
I will reach out.
Invite, or?
I will reach out to Carol, or I will do it myself, and then the Secretary Suzanne will send out a email blast.
Got it.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments on those items, please? I hear none. Mrs. Robinson?
Mr. Stafford,
Yes.
Mr. Mills,
Yes.
Ms. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Dillard,
Yes.
Ms. Clark,
Yes.
All right,
H2M.
H through M. Thank you. Board members, we need a motion and a second for a discussion and resolution for item N. Mr. Stafford, and I will second that, please.
I read the bulletin points that things changed.
Mrs. Crew, I'd love for you to read the bulletin points, thank you.
So the resolution that was on the agenda in November that you discussed, and after discussion, after more research, I just wanted to read the bullet points. that go into this. Through this resolution, the board further notifies the public that the board has authorized one or more persons to go on within a school district operated by the board. The board directs the superintendent to create procedures for qualified individuals to be approved and trained, which shall include the following requirements. Participation in this program is voluntary and limited to certain individuals who are approved by the superintendent. No staff member shall regularly carry firearms on their person other than the school resource officers. Firearms other than those carried by the school resource officers are secured in a locked safe, and all individuals who are authorized will complete and pass the required 24-hour training with the Ohio School Safety Center, and any additional subsequent training is determined by the district safety team. Pass a psychological assessment, pass a yearly background check, and complete a minimum of 8 hours each year to recertify. All training costs will be paid by the board and approved by the safety committee, and all training hours approved by the board shall be compensated at the employee's hourly or summer rate.
Thank you.
That was a change from what we
Yes.
included last year to include a little more information, so I wanted to make sure that went on the record and in the minutes.
Thank you. Board members, questions or concerns on the resolution?
I just want to add something, and I've been thinking a lot about this one, as we've talked a lot about it. And I guess if I take my board hat off and I put my parent hat on, I was thinking about what do I expect when I send my sons, which I've sent one through Tecumseh already, and my other son's a junior, so what do I expect when I send my son to Tecumseh? And I got a list of 3 things. And it's number 3, which is at the bottom of the list, that I expect Tecumseh to educate my son. Number 2, I hope that when they go to lunch, they have a friend to joke with, talk with, just that they're in a group of some kind. And number 1, I hope that they come home at the end of the day. And I want everybody to know, and the staff that's out here today and the staff that is not here, that know me and know the decisions that I've made on the board. So I'm begging you to trust me and my fellow board members. I don't know how they're going to vote on this, but the ones that vote yes, I'm begging them to trust me that number 1, that my son comes home at the end of the day is strongly considered when we vote on this tonight. So I'm just wanted to say that, so that's all I got.
My caveat is, I know that we don't discuss this in public. We do not discuss safety situations in public per state law. Those are executive session items that we keep quiet. I want to assure everybody sitting in this room and anybody that hears this afterwards or reads the minutes that we talked about this in my first meeting when I was sitting on the board. Mr. George came to the podium to talk about this in their first meeting. So we have been having these conversations. I would ask that, you know what, there are 5 of us sitting here. We've been elected by our school district to serve as representatives. And I would hope that in that, people pause and know that this is not a rush decision. So, anybody else? All right. Mrs. Robinson?
Mr. Stafford,
Yes.
Ms. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Mills,
Yes.
Mr. Dillard,
Yes.
Ms. Clark.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving into adoption of consent calendar for financials. This is O through W board members. I do need a motion and a second for these items. I'll make a motion. Can I have a second? Mr. Dillard? And Mrs. Robinson.
Just a one-pager tonight. Our financial audit is complete. It has not been released, but it is complete. As soon as it's released, I'll add it to the board agenda for approval. There were no major audit issues this year. Last year, we had the CDP debacle. Didn't have anything this year. There were 2 small gap issues, so that's not cash, that's the conversion. The compiler hit a wrong tax revenue code on one, and then the other one had to do with our net position related to our net pension liability that's configured by the auditors. I put on here that Daniel's not here, but he'd be happy to explain it from an auditor's perspective, but basically, by law, we have to say what our liability would be for every employee if they all retired today.
Yep.
And it was miscalculated, the auditors calculated a different way than what our compiler did. So there was an adjustment. Again, no cash related.
Is that something that the compiler will do differently, or it just depends on who's auditing?
If you have,
Yes.
usually whoever the compiler is,
Yeah.
and the auditor, I've never seen them have the same number.
Got it,
Whether it's
okay,
the auditor of
thank you.
state's office or a private firm, they never come up with the same, you would think they'd all have the same formula, but they don't.
Thank you.
So I was not concerned with those 2 small gap adjustments. It was a great audit, very pleased. They did not find any issues with our accounting records or the payroll records. So I do want to thank the accounting, payroll, food service, special ed. They all contribute a lot of information to the audit. The auditors have also begun closely examining our internal control processes in all school districts, including how those are documented and implemented in light of the recent cyber scams that are going on. They were impressed with our new internal controls here at Tecumseh that we've implemented over the past 2 years that had to do with our banking, our cross-training, and our separation of duties where money is involved. So they were very impressed with that. Excess costs, this is the time of year where we file for excess costs. That refers to when we educate a student that actually belongs to a different district because they're either foster placed or court placed in our district. And so we apply for costs that are in excess of what we receive as a base cost for those students. And so I wanted to say thank you to Daniel, Heather Skaggs, Denise Ward, and Susan Weil. They're the ones that put this data together. They have to pull, and it's always a year behind. So in December, they have to go back a whole entire fiscal year and pull the data for all these students. So it is a lot, and I do appreciate that they do that. So last year, we claimed $282,000 in excess costs. This year is $242,000. It was a decrease of about $40,000, but the decrease is because we had 8 less students that we calculated for excess costs. Or they were students that didn't qualify, so they were either less needy or they didn't attend here anymore. So they could have graduated. I didn't look into exactly why they left, but it was 8 students less than the previous year.
When it comes to excess costs, remind me that we are asking for that money from other districts?
Correct.
From their
So
home
we built-
district?
Yes, so what we do is we have to fill out this per ODU. They have a spreadsheet that we have to fill out with all the data. So we have to take what teacher costs are, what supply costs are, if they have one-on-one aides, if they have any special needs, if they have speech, OT, PT, psych, all those costs for each individual student, and we come up with a cost per student, and then we say, okay, well, we receive $8,000, but it costs $20,000.
Right.
So there's $12,000 in excess costs that we bill to the other school district that they have to then pay us for, and it comes via our foundation statement. However, if the student's only here 3/10 of the year, half of the year, or their disability code changes mid-year, that changes and fluctuates all of this information. So you may have to file 2 different types of excess costs for one student, which we did have to do on a few, because their disability code changes during the year. And they may only be here for 1 month, so you still have to calculate, but they may not qualify. So there's a lot of calculations that you do, and the student may not even qualify for excess costs, but you have to do it to make sure you get every penny that we're due.
And what's the, I'm sure I'm not gonna ask this the right way. What is our liability to other districts if they're asking us for excess costs?
So, and they do, so what happens is, they do the same thing we do, they do the calculations, and then I get an email that says, Green and Local has asked for you to pay these excess costs. I take that email, I go out into Odoo and look at what student it is, their disability, handicap, everything, and I send that information to Heather Skaggs, our EMIS coordinator. She validates that the student, yes, attended Greenon, yes, they live in our district, yes, that's their disability code. She validates all that information, and then I approve it online, and it gets deducted from our foundation. So we validate all that information from each district when we get a cost.
So are we to the good, or does this cost us every year?
We're usually always
We're to the good?
Mhm.
Thank you.
Currently, I just looked today, currently we've only received, now, we have until January 31st.
Right.
But so far, I think we've only received applications to pay other districts about 25,000. And we've
Oh, wow.
already, we've already finished ours at 242,
Well, okay.
so.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Board members, any other questions on that information?
We still on that very first financial report. The next is the fund advances.
Mhm.
Again, that's our grants that we do each month. The next is the amended certificate and appropriations. There was only one that we had this month, and it was a grant that we received for $40,000, and I was gonna let Brian talk about that.
Well, I'll kind of speak for Mr. Holbrook on this because this was kind of Mr. Holbrook's, one of his things that he's done since he's taken over as athletic director. So he was awarded a grant for a robot sprayer for the field. So, you know, as we move into the technology side of things here with everything, there will be a robot sprayer that several other school districts, I think, have applied for the same grant received, that will line the football, baseball, and softball fields. It will put logos if wanted in the end zones, in the center of the field. There are some neat things that that piece of equipment can do. So that's the robot sprayer through that grant.
And then the advance on property taxes, the board approves this every year, so that the county will advance us the funds so that we can invest it before they're actually due to us. The tax budget is what we went over at 5:30. Donations, Paul, Mark, you want to share?
Our VFW Post 9966 is donated to the Tecumseh High School Choir in the amount of $1,000. I'm not exactly sure what that's being allocated for within that department, but I know that they would appreciate it, we do appreciate it greatly. Our Tecumseh Education Foundation with teacher grants recently approved $5,848.28 worth. They approved as much as was allocated in our budget. We had excellent grants, teacher grants that were submitted, but unfortunately we can only accept so many. So I know that Rita Lane is in the audience and she's a founding member of TEF, so I'd like to acknowledge her. That's, I think, if I don't get it right, Rita, 1993? Yes, that's a long time to give, over 30 years to the Tecumseh Education Foundation. It's such a great organization with great people. I'm truly honored to be part of that, and I appreciate all they do for our district, our teachers, our students, and our community. Stacy Reynolds is our former child nutrition, you may remember her. And Aunt Pat is her aunt who passed away, and she gives money periodically. The bench here on the west side of the building that we made with recycled bottle caps is dedicated to Aunt Pat. And those funds help the students in the intense resource room here at the high school with projects that they have. So she had some other additional money came in, and she donated that to her Aunt Pat's fund. Just FYI.
The next one is the OHSAA girls basketball tournament. So we're hosting a tournament, and normally the board, you've already approved the rates for people to be paid at the tournaments, because we don't normally know the people that are going to fill these positions. However, I'm on an auditor of state committee, and webinar the other day, and they highly recommended that if we know the names, we approve names. So that's an adjustment that Mark knew the names, so that's why they're on here, and the dates of the tournament. So it's just additional information. You've already approved the amounts, but those are the names. Absolutely.
I'd like to just make a notation if you're wondering why they're all paid positions. And there's one that is a volunteer only, that's Mr. Pat Martin. The reason being, he is employed as a classified hourly employee. Classified hourly employees are not allowed to be paid through this. Certified are, but for the same reason our classified hourly employees aren't allowed to be hired as coaches under that same code.
It's the overtime issue.
So overtime Ohio revised code in that. Just, you might have wondered, so I wanted to clarify that.
There's only one unpaid leave for 12/20.
And change in field trip pay rate, we're asking you, the board, to approve an increase in bus driver field trip pay. Currently, it's $16 an hour. We'd like it to be increased to the individual bus driver's current hourly rate. And this also includes drug testing trips and van trips. Van drivers, so I'll stop there for a minute and explain that. So currently, everyone receives $16 if a field trip is not necessarily just a field trip. All of our athletic events, when buses take our kids everywhere, is called a field trip. We're having difficulty at times having bus drivers who we can't make them, it's not part of their contract, who are eager to volunteer for that. A lot of it is cited, it's only $60 an hour and I make 21, or I make, $20 an hour. So just asking the board to approve that to be increased from 16 to their hourly rate in hopes of getting more people to take field trips and our kids being on time to different athletic events, etc. And then also, this also includes van drivers who are not bus drivers, those non-CDL holders will remain at $16 an hour unless they have a normal route, like Brian talked about today. We're trying to hire a person to have a normal van route to reduce the amount of time that our students are sitting on buses waiting for students in other schools to get on.
It's a little bit different transportation than a typical taking them to school, let them all out, you're pulling into driveways, dropping off kids, getting them out, those kind of things. So we
The
feel
same responsibility factor as being a bus driver,
Absolutely.
essentially.
Yeah.
Any questions on that?
Any questions on any of these items? I appreciate the explanation of the tournament, basketball tournament pay. All right, I hear none. Mrs. Robinson?
Ms. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Diller,
Yes.
Mr. Stafford,
Yes.
Mr. Mills,
Yes.
Ms. Clark.
Moving into instructional. Board members, I need a motion and a second for item X for an out-of-state field trip. May I have a motion and a second? Mr. Diller and Mr. Stafford. Thank you. Ms. Cribb?
And so we're asking the board to approve an out-of-school, or out-of-state, overnight field trip for the Air Force Junior ROTC. This is an annual drill meet that they go to. It's so far away that they do need to stay overnight.
And they've done this many years.
Yes.
Yeah. Board members, questions, concerns? Delightful. Mrs. Robinson?
Mr. Diller,
Yes.
Mr. Stafford,
Yes.
Mr. Mills,
Yes.
Ms. Martin,
Yes.
Ms. Clark.
Yes.
Fantastic. Moving over to policy. We have two sections. Let's start with section Y, does not require any motions as I'm looking at this. We have two items, organizational meeting and release time for religious instruction. Mrs. Cribb.
Thank you. Policy 0151 is for the organizational meeting. And that was intended to be on that long list of policies for you to review last month, and it was mistakenly left off. So I have to put it on for a review and a vote. So it's just a review, and it is in your changes to board policies document, and it was already listed as one of the policies. The second board policy to review is the release time for religious instruction. I'd actually like to, in lieu of the interest in sharing information, I'd like to actually read that policy out loud so it appears in the minutes. There were some questions in what was included in that policy, so I wanted to share. This is the policy that we're reviewing this evening, correct? So release time policy 5223, release time for religious instruction. The Board of Education desires to cooperate with those parents who wish to provide for religious instruction for their children, but also recognizes its responsibility to enforce the attendance requirements of the state. Students may be provided release time from school to attend a course in religious instruction conducted by a private entity off district property for not more than 1 day per week, provided that the following requirements are met. Such students will not be considered absent when student's parents or guardian gives consent in writing. The sponsoring entity will provide the district with a copy of the written consent for each student before a student will be permitted to leave school grounds to participate in the program. Sponsoring entity maintains attendance records and makes them available to the district. The sponsoring entity shall defer to district office staff on attendance procedures for individual buildings. Sponsoring entity shall ensure students sign out and sign in upon their return to school using the district's attendance process on each day they participate in the program. Sponsoring entity will ensure that the district has a copy of the attendance sheet showing the sign in and out of students each day upon the student's departure and return. Sponsoring entity provides and assumes liability for student and provides a certificate of insurance to the district, and student assumes responsibility for any missed school work. Sponsoring entity shall not provide recruiting materials, business cards, candy treats, trinkets, etc. for students to take back to the school building. Staff of sponsoring entity may not distribute those materials to students who are not in the program. Transportation of students to and from release time instruction is the complete responsibility of the sponsoring entity, the parent, guardian, and/or student. The Board of Education, its members, and employees are immune from liability for any injuries arising from transportation to and from release time instruction. Further, no board funds will be expended for and no district personnel shall be involved in the provision of religious instruction. The sponsoring entity will ensure that all vehicles used to transport students, including but not limited to vans, meet the same safety standards required of district vehicles. Students shall only be excused during lunch or recess to attend release time instruction. Shortened days such as 2-hour delays due to inclement weather, scheduled 2-hour delays, early release days, etc., as well as the state testing weeks are excluded from release time for religious instruction. The superintendent, on behalf of the Board of Education, shall collaborate with a sponsoring entity of a release time course in religious instruction to identify a time to offer the course during the school day. The superintendent, in his or her sole discretion, may temporarily suspend release time for religious instruction if a private entity fails to adhere to the provisions of this or any other policy of the Board of Education. Staff members shall not promote or discourage participation in release time programs for any religious instructional program. The sponsoring entity certifies that any persons working with the district students in the program have passed a criminal background check, including a BCI, FBI, criminal check backgrounds, and the sponsoring entity shall not permit any person to work in the program with district students who has been convicted of or pled guilty of or no consent to any criminal offense that would disqualify said individual from employment with an Ohio public school district. Nothing herein shall constitute an endorsement of religion or infringe upon an individual's First Amendment right. So that's the policy under review.
So tonight is our, remember, we suspended through tonight. And so tonight, our action is that this is a first review of this policy. It will be on our agenda again next month in this form. All right, and Mrs. Crew, the policy, let me pause. Board members, any questions about those two policies under first review? I hear none. Moving into those for approval. This is where I do need a motion and a second to approve these following list of policies that we've had for several months as a review. Board members, a motion and a second, please.
First.
Thank you, Mrs. Clark, and who was my second? Thank you, Mr. Mills. Thank you. Anything in these, Mrs. Crowe?
No, we discussed those last time, and I did include the TLS changes to board policy document with you,
Yes.
for you, so that just kind of outlines the changes or additions to the policy.
Wonderful. Board members, any questions or concerns as you have read those over the past few months? Good to go?
Oh, we just really appreciate what changed document that we get along with it.
I agree.
Really,
Agree. Appreciate having that. Anything else? I hear none. Mrs. Robinson, if you'll take the roll for those items, please.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Mills?
Yes.
Mr. Stafford?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Dillon?
Mrs. Crew, board visits and tours?
Yes, we typically do these sometimes at the end of February, end of March. We do those on Friday, and we typically have at least a Friday in between, so that we're not going 2 Fridays in a row. I know several of you have to take vacation from your full-time work job to do that. I wanted to see if we could collect dates, specifically the dates of March 7th and March 21st. And yes, I did change this from what we talked about earlier, because in the middle of that, on the week of the 14th is the musical, and I didn't, that Friday, I didn't know if that would be. So I just wanted to check your availability for the morning of March 7th.
That's Friday.
Well, then you should be available.
March-
No?
March 7th is Friday.
Friday, okay.
I'm available both days.
March 7th and the 21st?
I have a project meetings every
Yeah.
Friday at 9, but I can see if I have to see if I can get out of it.
Okay.
I know I still run.
I mean, you're kind of in charge.
Roger, how do those dates work for you, sir? How does the March 7th and 21st work for you?
I'm fine.
Brenda?
Yes.
Matt?
They work.
I'll have to get that.
I'm good.
So,
As I sit here today, I'm good.
Are you comfortable if we set him for that, John, or do you want us to wait?
go ahead, I might, we're
Since you have
turning
that,
over,
right?
we're turning over a library like at the end of March, so there's like project meetings leading up to it, so it's hard to get out of it.
I understand.
All right.
All right, so we'll go with March 7 and March 21 for those.
Correct, thank
And
you.
those are Friday mornings.
You said 9 full time? At the
No.
board office?
We usually start like 7 or 7:30.
I'll send you a specific time, I'll put that in the web page.
Mm-hmm. And Mrs. Crew, when you're ready, if you want to move into any reports you have for us, that'd be great.
Yeah, thank you. I just had a couple of things. First of all, I would like to extend my great appreciation to Brian Dixon and all of our those people as well. The last 2 days we've had our team, our custodians, our mechanics, our maintenance crew really working hard to clear parking lots, and Brian can go into more detail in his report with that. But I just wanted to give an overarching thank you to all that they do. There's a lot of snow. And it's hard to clear all that, so I'll let Brian talk about it in his report. They did a great job, parking lots look really good. We were around earlier today. Some of our roads don't look so hot, so we are on a 2-hour delay tomorrow. That information was disseminated while we sat here earlier. we'll take a look at the roads again in the morning and see where we go from here. I wanted to extend to you an invitation to CTC has invited us, the treasurer, myself, and board members, is your official, to, on February 10th, to come to dinner as a thank you for all of the schools supporting their endeavors to get their levy passed and to build new facilities. As a graduate of CTC then JDS, I can tell you that they needed them in '87, so I'm excited that they're doing that. If you can RSVP to me, I can share with Michelle, their superintendent, if you're able to go or not on that night. The food is being made by the students in the Jaguar Room, which is the culinary arts program, and it's fantastic food if you've not had that. So again, I extend that invitation to you on behalf of Michelle, their superintendent. Wanted to let you know we are working on the connecting link. That does go out 2 times a year, typically in August and January. So we have some information that I'm going to put in there regarding the renewal levy. Factual information, of course, that I'll share with our attorney prior to make sure there's nothing in there that would cause any red flags to go up because of information that's not factual. Remember, we can't persuade in that, we just have to get facts.
You passed around the invitation for the Hall of the Athletic Hall of Fame.
Yes, thank you. And then I have a larger photo.
Oh, thank you.
I just wanted to let you know about that with the dates down here. Our Athletic Hall of Fame is the 18th, and I know our athletic boosters who put that on would love to see board members there. If any of you can make it, that would be fabulous. And that coming around shows you who's being inducted. And I passed it. It's JT.
Kyle Sanning.
Was it and Bianca?
And Bianca and Kyle. So a great group of folks being inducted into the Hall of Fame this year. The musical is the weekend of March 14th through the 16th. And it's Shrek. And it's, will be a wonderful presentation for us. So I encourage you to go if you'd like to go to that. And Mrs. Woods is working hard with her students to get that ready. And I think that's all that I have for my report tonight. Brian, do you have anything?
I'll just kind of piggyback on what Paula said. It's been a busy January for a lot of folks that don't get the time off at Christmas unless they take vacation, but huge thank you to everyone that helped with snow removal. I fondly refer to Steve Lokai as our snowman in the district because he does work hand in hand with our contractor to make sure things are coordinated with snow removal. So just a huge shout out to our building custodial staff, Brian Smith, Pat Martin, Boyd Barger, anybody that could jump in this week, jumped in and helped. Paul even called me one time and said I got a shovel in the back of my truck. But battling Mother Nature is always a challenge. I won't say that we are winning, but because things always change, but we're putting up a good fight right now and hope to continue that. Hopefully this is it, but it's still early. And I hear we're getting 4 inches on Friday.
On Friday.
We'll see.
In the afternoon. Deputy Dillon, what do you have for us, sir?
Yes, yesterday at 12 a.m. we have a new leader of the Sheriff's Office. His name's Christopher D. Clark, and his new staff, Mark Lane, Chad Eubanks, Nauman, and Dave Perks. So we have new staff for leaders of our Sheriff's Office, and got new changes and excited for it. So if you ever run into them, please congratulate them, and we're really excited for the change.
Thank you. Thank you for the reports.
Thank you. All right, we do have informational items, all the dates listed. Parent-teacher conferences. Okay. we have our next board meeting not listed. Maybe? There it is, February 18th. So look forward to hanging out with you all there. Let's go ahead to comments from our board members. Matt Mills, start us off.
I'll start with CTC. A lot to report actually about CTC, pretty exciting. So back before Christmas, I had the opportunity to meet with the acronym escapes me, OFCC, Ohio
Yes.
Facilities Construction Commission. And so the district's gonna start selling bonds next month. They're gonna have the money in hand to start building. They're gonna be reaching out to a design firm and getting them on board in mid to late March, and then they're gonna procure a contractor in mid to late April. They're gonna be working pretty fast. It's gonna be about a 2 to 3 year build.
Wow.
I'm gonna try and push them to do it faster, because the need is there. But that is happening, so it was actually really neat to see some positivity and some positive stuff going on there. In terms of everything else going on, looking forward to the musical coming up, attending that. Really looking forward to board tours now that we've got dates for those. I do want to make a comment about, I typically don't do this, but I feel moved to do it tonight. I am severely disappointed with our legislature in the state of Ohio and what they passed. Not all provisions of HB8, there's some of those that I like, but the release time for religious instruction I find extremely disappointing. I'm all for, I'm a Christian myself, grew up in the church, still go to church, I'm all for that being there. It's a shame that this is now being forced out of the local hands who know their communities the best and being moved to a state. I also do want to say, and the time will come to where there's going to be organizations and individuals that the community may not like. We don't have a say in that anymore. So when that time comes, take it up with your state legislature, don't take it up with this body. And that's all I have to say on that.
Here. Roger Diller? What you got for us, sir? Anything to share?
No, I really don't, not this night.
All right.
There's a lot that went on tonight.
Yes. Mrs. Clark?
I would like to say that I'm excited, after Brooke and Mr. Behorn had come and Brooke did her presentation for the middle school VOAG program. And I thought the kids did a great job, and I made sure to tell her that. But in the past, Mr. Behorn has tried to put together a booster group with his VOAG parents or kids that have grown up and now are parents, or maybe not, but they'd like to support. Now I would like to say we had a meeting and we had 15 adults in attendance with some students too. We are now called VOAG boosters. We are not called alumni, because I was not in, I'm an alumni of here, but was not in VOAG. But am a big proponent of that. Both of my kids went through there, my grandgirl's going through there. So that's a big thing for us in our family. But you are more than welcome. It's not necessarily that we are asking for any kind of donation, but right now we have set aside one meeting every quarter. We're following Mr. Behorn's leadership as far as what the kids do with their fundraising and where we need to be and help with that. And they're doing 4 different things throughout the year. So that's just something that I feel like if we can get it off the ground, there's a bunch of good people that showed up, and it was exciting to see. So that was a couple weeks ago. But I can get you the dates for that. I have them written down, just don't have them with me.
Wonderful. Thank you. Mr. Stafford?
Just want to comment a little bit on the religious release program. was thinking as we roll into 2025, and I graduated in 95, it's 30 years removed now. A nice round number. And when I went to high school, I went through Tecumseh schools, there was not a lot of choices for parents as far as my parents were concerned. And you had Tecumseh, homeschool, which really wasn't as popular, and then maybe the JPS when we got older. Now it's the CTC, I believe. But with like the times that have changed now, it's just wild to me. Like my kids, when they're seniors, their goal is to spend like only half a day at school and get college credits. And kids are graduating when they're sophomores with 4-year degrees in college. And I was just, whether we like it or not, like they're with charter schools and virtual schools and STEM schools and I don't know, homeschool, and I'm sure I'm leaving out some of the other options. Whether we're competing for students, and what we're going to have programs like LifeWise come in, and I feel like whether we like them or not, and I will say that I watched these people the last 3 meetings, good people on both sides. I felt like I was watching a tennis match because they both made good points for why you should or shouldn't have it. And we're going to see these programs more and more come through, and we have to strongly consider offering them to our parents because we are competing for kids. And if we don't offer them, they're going to take their kids to Christian schools or wherever else they can go. So whether that means I'm in favor of it, I don't know. It's mandated right now, so I'm just wanting to bring that to the up as I was just thinking about it, I guess. And switching gears, the basketball team is 5-5. We just lost one of our starters, and this is hard to believe, but we had a kid break his femur. Which is, usually you don't break your femur unless you're in a car wreck or something, so it was a tough injury, but
Playing the game?
practice. We're not done. But anyways, 5-5, so hopefully we'll win more than we lose the second half. And Brian, you might want to talk about this too, but I heard that we were changing out the lights in the gym, so I'm excited to see the new lit up. And it was very like reasonable, just the bulbs, I think.
Just the balls, yeah. You go in there and it doesn't look like the walls are quote unquote yellow. They look white.
So I'm excited to see that in the next home game, which I think is Friday, right?
It is Friday, or Saturday, Friday to Saturday.
That's all I have.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. I just want to pause and thank the board and thank everybody who is here with us tonight, everybody who spoke and shared opinions. It feels like there's a lot of heavy topics in front of us, and I want to say thank you for the thoughtful consideration and comments across the board, right? And it does, for me personally, it feels very heavy, and I just want to say that I think that we are all taking everything very seriously and thoughtfully, and going the direction that we feel is best for our kids. So thank you all for all of that. I'm excited for board tours. I wasn't able to make last year, so I'm excited to make this year because they're so much fun, and I know my peers make fun of me because they lose me along the way, but whatever. So that's all I have. We do have the second opportunity for public comment. This is more of the free form. Tell me what you think about the snow, whatever's on your mind. So still 5 minutes, still a 30-minute window. If needed, we can do more. So I will open that up. At this time, I see Paula Fugate making her way to the podium.
First off, everybody be careful going home. I will say that I am disappointed in the action that was taken tonight regarding our staff. When we have as many educators and employees and everybody else, I can see where they're coming from. Of course, I was 17 years old when a loaded German Luger dropped out of the guy's pocket in front of me at work, so I kind of witnessed what it was to have a firearm in front of me. But my disappointment is there. My another disappointment is, and I know you've been busy, and at this point in time, I don't care if you take me up on it or not. But considering that my invitation was ignored, I see where you're at. The third thing is 2 of the policies. Student conduct, student parent rights. I've brought this up several times to individuals. In today's world, we have parents. We have parents that want to be friends, and we have parents that aren't even there. We have kids who are just as nice as they can be and as polite as they can be. And then we have kids who'll tell a teacher, tell a worker, tell anybody to use the expletive at any time. Of course, I know that, and I've witnessed the principals, the vice principal, whatever, taking the situation under control. But it is past time for us to start also holding the parents accountable for their actions. Because what we're seeing in today's world, and I think John and Matt are definitely ones that can verify something that I'm getting ready to say, is kids today don't own up to responsibility because they're not held to consequences. It's like we can do what we want, when we want, and how we want. Unfortunately, it's been left up to the schools to do the training. That's why companies can't keep workers today, because we don't have our children who are brought up in this. But it is past time for parents to be also held accountable. How this can be done under state law, I'm not sure. But it's something, some of the things that have been hurled at me and other people, yes, I've kept my cool. 15 years ago, they wouldn't have had any teeth.
Thank you, Mrs. BJ.
I just have a couple of questions. With item F, will F1 and F2 be made available to the public?
They can be, it is,
Will we have to do a records request?
do they have to do,
Or will it be?
I don't think
in the
so.
minutes?
I'm sorry? It will be in the minutes.
Okay. And then my next question with Lifewise, she spoke that they will need to know what classes. That will fall on our secretaries. So my thing is, if it's voluntaries, let the families figure out what classes they're missing. I mean, they don't even know who their kids' teachers are when they call to assign them out. So good luck figuring out what classes they're missing. And then-
So can I, and usually I don't come back to this.
Yeah, no,
these
no, I
main
appreciate
comments,
that.
But I can answer this one right now. On the policy itself, the only classes they're permitted to, all our core classes, as our Board of Education deems it, so they're only allowed to miss lunch and recess.
Okay, now, with lunch, do we have to provide them a lunch?
We're currently working on that, and that will be in the administrative guidelines that accompany this, if this is passed.
Because then those kids will be cutting to be first in line every week that they're going to LifeWise, and they will get special lunches that our free lunch kids will not be able to get because theirs will have to be to-go bags. And then that will be more decisive in the elementaries because my mom can't buy me a lunch ever, so I get whatever the lunch is. And then they get to get their special lunch to go on a special field trip every week. That will be very hard for the little kids to understand why Joey can get a sack lunch and not. I feel, again, when we go on field trips, students pack your lunch. If you're opting to leave Tecumseh Local, again, it's voluntary and it's family oriented. Let the families figure out how to feed their kids. That is my opinion.
Yeah.
As Carrie Castle 78 Ravenwood.
Sue Ann Martin, 507 Glen.
Yeah, like,
Part of the conversation in our state legislature, just as a side note, is that they are determining how we can feed the children. And they will tell us how that will happen.
or maybe
The state legislature.
if that is the case, then I would suggest that on LifeWise days, the whole building has the option of the sack lunches too. So then any child that goes or stays back would have the option, you know? But that adds work to our kitchen
So
staff.
we're working on that, and which can't happen because we can't spend costs in the district, we're not permitted to, but use.
But our state legislature.
Right. Well, and my thing is like with packing like when we take a field trip, you have to let the kitchen know how many sack
Totally
lunches
agree.
you'll have 2 weeks in advance, so that they have time to put them together.
Choir.
So, and then a question about your arming your staff, when's that going to be implemented? I mean, normally when policies are passed, they're in effect the next day. So when will the trainings take place and when will?
To me, I don't know, or did you want to guide, did you want to?
I don't believe that we have had that conversation of when that will be in effect.
Okay.
We are merely passing the resolution.
And when you do the trainings, will they include actual students? Because I know Mr. George spoke, like if you're at the mall and someone pulls a gun, that's way different than having 29-year-olds behind you. So if they're going to get trained, they should get trained in real life situations.
Carrie, it's my understanding in the research that I have done that the simulation and the training that is being completed is very true in real life.
And then, totally, it has no, this is why I brought it at the end. Changing the grading scale for a building, does that have to be approved by the board? And same with the 2F policy, is that a board approved or is that something the administrator can just change? Could you find out
I'm looking
for
into
me?
that, I can look into that,
Okay,
I don't know that off the top of my head.
okay. Because
Whether your question was board policy, question mark, if it's a,
so the grading scale was changed at the high school. And the last week of December, the 2F policy was changed at the high school.
yes.
And it was stated that it was board approved. So, when questioned, so if you guys could get back to me on
It
that one.
depends, if the.
And I
the
did
student-
email-
The
I
student
also-
handbook is approved.
Correct,
So if it's
and
in the
this,
student handbook.
it is,
then-
and the response was because we've changed to percentages, we are foregoing that part of the handbook.
I can look at that.
All right,
Oh, look at that, I set a timer on my computer.
thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Castle. Hey, tell me
I'm gonna
something
pass
good.
on-
You're not even back in school yet.
I got
Snow
nothing.
days?
No, I got nothing
Okay,
tonight.
thank you.
Not-
Anybody else? Last call? I hear none. Board members, I will need a motion in a second. We do have a need for executive session. We'll be going into executive session for the following reason. to consider the employment of a public employee or official, to consider matters required to be kept confidential by federal law or regulations or state statutes, and to discuss details to the security arrangements and emergency response protocols for the Board of Education. May I have a motion and a second, please, for executive? Thank you, Mr. Dillard. And Mrs. Clark. Mrs. Robinson.
Mr. Dillon? Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Stafford? Mr. Mills?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes,
7:43.
thank you. 5-minute break? Be here, be square. Okay. Thank you all.
My wife texted me and said, you know, when Trump is changing the name of the golf, that started the golf.
I've been seeing a lot of that.
We're talking about trying to.